President Trump has boldly proclaimed, let me repeat this again, in writing for the whole world to see, President Trump has declared Biden's Autopen pardons void, vacant, and of no further force or effect. One more time for those that didn't hear it. Biden pardons void, vacant, and of no further force or effect. This is the president that America voted for. A total rejection of Obama 3.0 masquerading itself as a questionably placed regime with Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. as the headliner and Kamala Harris as the. These are absolutely incredible times, political times we are living in, folks. Cherish them because we will never live through a time like this again. And hopefully we never will have to live like a time like this again, because all of the Marxism, realistically, a huge chunk of the Marxist takeover of our great republic will be thwarted. And most importantly, because we control the upper and lower chambers of the legislature, they will forthwith, quickly codify and make law President Trump and the people's mandate. Okay, so here we go. The political reckoning has begun. Oh, by the way, I think it should be obvious. Happy St. Paddy's Day. How often do you have an excuse to wear a gaudy green jacket like this, which I got when I was probably about 20 pounds heavier, so it fits a little loose, and just in case, got the green-faced watch. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I've done my genealogy, and a runaway slave married an Irish immigrant on my paternal grandmother's side of the family. It's an incredible story. Maybe I'll share it with you one day if I can find the notes that I took when I was 21 years old, sitting down with my great, one of my two great grandmothers living at the time. So happy St. Paddy's Day. Yes, BCP James has Irish blood running through this brown body. Let's get into this, folks. President Trump, truth, last night, the pardons, and I'm doing air quotes because President Trump put this in quotes in his declaration last night on Truth Social. The pardons that Sleepy Joe Biden gave to the unselect committee of political thugs and many others are hereby declared, and then all caps, void, vacant, and of no further force or effect, because of the fact that they were done by Autopen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them. The necessary pardoning documents were not explained to or approved by Biden. He knew nothing about them, and the people that did may have committed them. Therefore, those on the unselected deleted all evidence obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me and many other innocent people should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is, they were probably responsible for the documents that were signed on their behalf without the knowledge or consent of the worst president in the history of our country, crooked Joe Biden. Wow. Wow, with a capital G-U-A or G-A-U. Sorry, from the Spanish spelling. W-O-W. Caps. Wow. Okay, let's take a second to break this down, folks, because President Trump said quite a bit in here. First of all, he doubled down on the unselect committee of political thugs. We know that this committee was not done properly, because when you have a committee of this sort, it's supposed to be bipartisan, and the Democrat one-party leader who put this into effect. Nancy Pelosi is able to pick her people, Democrats, and then the leader of the opposing party is able to put their people on. So when this happened, we had Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, and we had Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader in the House of Representatives. He put Jim Jordan, and I can't remember the other person he put on there, and those Republicans were rejected by Nancy Pelosi, and then she put her own Republicans on, not following the rules. She put on Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. Therefore, it was not a properly done select committee. President Trump is correct. It was an unselect committee. Number one. Then he goes on to say that he declares that they are void, vacant, and of no further force or effect. Now, remember, these are presidential pardons supposedly done by Joe Biden, and this is the subsequent or the next president declaring those presidential pardons void, vacant, and of no further force or effect. But then he gives the reason why. They were done by Autopen. Folks, we're going to get into the weeds on President Trump and the Autopen, all that stuff in the next few minutes. New details coming over the weekend. I'm going to break this down for you. President Trump is just not speaking like the left is going to have you say, oh, it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a knee-jerk reaction because supposedly President Trump is a wild and crazy and erratic guy, not the stable genius we know him to be. So President Trump is making several claims here, and we're going to go into detail to see how President Trump is correct in these details. So he says Joe Biden did not sign them, and more importantly, he knew nothing about them. Now, of course, I haven't gone into the leftist press yet today, but I know them. I've been covering them for 8-9 years now, 10 years now. That they're going to be, President Trump doesn't know what he's saying. He's just throwing this stuff out there. How dare he say, President Trump is now in the Oval Office. President Trump now has the intel. President Trump now has his people at FBI and DOJ. And there are people who are mad as hell that were in Joe Biden's camp, that are mad as hell of the coup that took place on the Democrat side. President Trump has insiders from within the Joe Biden White House. He's not just talking out of turn. It's ridiculous when the leftist press says that. President Trump is now the president. He has access to this information. And how many times ad infinitum, how many times ad nauseum do we know that President Trump has said something? It seems totally wacky. Even we who love and cherish President Trump are duly elected and beloved 45th and 47th, and also, which number he actually should have been as well. President, how many times have we said, oh, yeah, and the left has been forced to say, oh, yeah, President Trump was proven right. The Hunter Biden laptop was false. Yeah, it was a witch hunt. Yes, there was no coordination or collusion. Mueller, after all that time, goes, yeah, there really knows no evidence of that. President Trump has already been proven right, but he will be proven right even further. The biggest thing here, folks, is President Trump calling this void, vacant, and of no further force or effect as a president, not just based on Autopen, but that Joe Biden didn't even know he signed it. Then he goes later to say that it was probably the same people that were pardoned that talked to whoever was actually controlling the administration, asking them for those pardons, knowing that President Trump had run on retribution. Come on, folks. Do you see a George W. doing this? Could you have seen a Mitt Romney doing this? For kicks and giggles, for absolute shizzle and giggles. Put in the chat, or if you're watching the replay, put in the comment section below if you can think of any potential presidential candidate in the last 20 years, or possibly in 2028 and beyond, who would be as bold as President Trump in doing what he's doing. I'm just curious if you can see on the horizon or in an alternate universe, some or other Republican that would be as bold and just charging forward like President Trump is right now and taking on the deep state. No one, nope, none. Vance would, okay. Vance would, okay. Besides Vance, let me see if any other names come up. So who's nervous right now? Liz Cheney's sure as hell nervous. Nancy Pelosi is nervous. Everyone on that committee is nervous. There will be reckoning for the 6 of Jayers. And not just for these bastards, treasonous, traitorous, rat ones, but also justice, even though you can't give them back the time, for our Sixers who were falsely imprisoned. Oh, we're going to get into that as well. I'm telling you, folks, I'm going to cover a lot of details. So let's move forward. President Trump also was on to say that the people who signed with the Autopen these pardons probably committed a crime. Probably committed a crime. Therefore, all those on the unselect committee who destroyed and deleted all evidence should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level, which of course would mean the DOJ. Wow. And then he goes on to say, all this was done without the knowledge or consent. Not only were they not given consent by Joe Biden, but Joe Biden had no knowledge that this was happening. Of the worst president in the history of our country, crooked Joe Biden. By the way, let me take in a little side here. Joe Biden totally destroyed the Democrat Party, and the further destruction of it is being done by the party leaders. The Democrat Party has hit this is NBC. This is NBC within about 48 hours ago, a little over 24 hours ago. Democrat Party hits new polling low. Democrat Party hits new polling low. What are the numbers? Just 7% say they are very positive of the Democrat Party. 7%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7%. 7. Only 7% of people say they have a very favorable. That means 93% of people. Oh no, let me give you the full number. Let me give you the full number so that once again, this is according to Bridget Bowman, Ben Camisser, and Alexandra Marquez at NBC News yesterday. Just over a quarter of registered voters, 27% say they have positive views of the party, but only 7% say they are very positive. So 7% say they're very positive. That means that there's only 7% of registered voters in this NBC poll, national NBC poll. And remember, NBC is trying to pump up these numbers as good as well as possible, and only 7% are saying that they are very positive. Just over a quarter say they are at all positive. That means, folks, do not be deterred. Do not be dismayed. Do not feel like you're alone. We are the majority. A majority of registered American voters do not detest the Democrat Party and the legacy of Obama 3.0. Oh, I'm sorry. Not Obama 3.0. The Biden-Harris administration. There you have it, folks. I just want to throw that in there because we are not alone. We are not the fringe. We are not the crazy right-wing extremists. We are the majority. Okay, let's go back to the Autopen stuff. Okay, so during a recent visit to the Department of Justice, President Trump questioned the validity of official documents signed by Biden using an Autopen. And he told us on Friday that they potentially could be invalid. He said, quote, crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it. And he, generally speaking, signed it with Autopen. So how would we know that Autopen is a big deal? I don't know. You know who's doing this, Trump said. Folks, this is a pattern of President Trump that I have covered time and time again over the last 8+ years. President Trump says something that seems like a throwaway comment, but what he's doing is he's foreshadowing. He's giving us nuggets of what's to come, and then later he picks up on that again and doubles down on it and absolutely drives the leftist press crazy. But President Trump is a stable genius. Call it 4D chess. Call it him just playing chess with the leftist media, especially playing checkers. I'm not one of the people that is going to say that the Democrat Party is stupid and they don't know what they're doing. These are very scary, smart, evil people. It's not mutually exclusive, folks. You can be evil and demonic and very smart and conniving. It's stupid when I hate it when Pence and other people, even people I like on the right, make this idea that because the left is evil, that they are somehow stupid. But President Trump knows their game, and he does play on another level. He knows that if he throws out there some throwaway comment, they're going to dismiss it, and then he's going to come out and follow up on it a week, 2 weeks, a month later with evidence and with firepower behind it. The whole time he is destroying the leftist narrative, but they are keeping that. They're keeping what President Trump said in the public eye. Folks, realize how awesome and genius this is of President Trump. He says something, they keep it in the news cycle, refuting it, and then President Trump comes out with proof. But he uses them to keep the subject alive. They want to hide behind the Autopen. They want to forget the Autopen. They want to forget Joe Biden was cognitively declined. They want to forget that he wasn't really running the show. And President Trump, because he keeps dripping and dropping and doing little nuggets here and little breadcrumbs here and there, keeps the subject in front of America and the world's eyes. Not just America's eyes, folks. Everyone pays attention to what President Trump does. So he talked about that, and I covered it on Friday, what he said. But he said this. But you don't use Autopen, number one. It's disrespectful to the office. Number two, maybe it's not even valid because, who's getting him to sign? He had no idea what the hell he was doing. If he did, all those bad things wouldn't be happening. That's what President Trump said on Friday, and I covered that over the weekend and on Friday. And now he has this void, invalidating it. All of the signatures were the Autopen, and the only one that's different from the Autopen signatures was his announcement that he was dropping out of the race. But here we go, folks. I told you to strap in. Let's get in some details here. The Autopen signatures that don't match the signature for him dropping out of the race, there's actually 2 Autopens to those signatures. Yeah, check this out. As if one fraudulent signature weren't enough, the Oversight Project identified on Saturday 2 distinct Autopen signatures that Biden's administration had been using. Analysis of 51 clemency warrants issued by Biden show 16 were signed by Autopen A, 16 were signed by Autopen B. Wow. Amazing. Only 19 appeared to be actual wet ink signatures. And they broke it down by how long the L is on the end of the signature. They are very different. And some have a period after R for Robinette and some don't. But they're Autopen. So a few of them match exactly one style. A few match exactly the other style, but they are Autopen. Only 19 wet signatures. And folks, as we covered a few days ago, let's not forget that some of these pardons were signed at the city of Washington, but Joe Biden was in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He physically, and it would be impossible unless he were a clone or had a clone. I don't believe. I don't believe in that he has a clone. Are there doubles? That is a lot more likely. So which one was the real Joe Biden? The one in St. Croix or the one who said he signed the White House? Oh, that's right. They never even said he was at the White House. So who signed it? And who signed it at the city of Washington when he wasn't even in Washington? Folks, we've never seen anything like this. We've never seen anything like this. Plus, we know that he had age-related cognitive issues. Even Dr. Jill, we say doctor lightly, former press secretary, admitted about 3 weeks ago on a podcast that Joe Biden's White House knew that Joe Biden's mental health was declining. And he admitted that they gaslit America about his cognitive issues. President Trump has all of that stuff. That's right. Just a reminder. I'm not sure if I covered it on this show or my other show. By the way, I do have another show. It's called the BCP Podcast. Go to bcpextras.com or therealbcp.com. You can watch it there. But Tara Palmieri did a podcast with Jill Biden, former White House press secretary, Michael LaRosa, and he admitted the lights are on, but nobody's home, and they gaslit America. Wow. Now, if that wasn't enough, President Trump had an absolute weekend defying the crazy activist judge Boasberg that said that President Trump could not deport Tren de Aragua and dangerous foreign terrorist criminals out of our country. So as this was all happening while I was covering some of these news stories over the weekend, President Trump, an activist judge, has said, oh no, President Trump cannot deport these people. President Trump, they totally sided. I mean, talk about treasonous, traitorous rat bastards. We have Venezuela invading our country using Tren de Aragua terrorists to invade our country. President Trump reenacts the 1798 act to be able to get these people out of our country, and some judge tries to invalidate that. And we found out 1, 2, 3 separate flights took these people out of our country. Absolutely amazing. Let me get into these details. And a whole bunch of them are now, by the way, in El Salvador. President Trump's Justice Department provided an update to a radical judge's order forcing planes en route to Central and South America carrying dangerous Venezuelan aliens to turn around and come back to the U.S. Over the weekend, on Saturday, Judge James Boasberg, of course, an Obama appointee, granted a temporary restraining order to stop the Trump administration from deporting thousands of Venezuelan nationals under the Aliens Enemies Act. Far left-hating leftist groups such as the ACLU and Democracy Forward rushed to a DC court, of course, in a desperate bid to shield the dangerous illegal aliens from deportation. Judge Boasberg's TRO halted deportations of the aliens for 14 days. Okay, I covered that over the weekend. But later, Judge Boasberg issued an emergency injunction and ordered the Trump administration to turn around planes that were deporting dangerous Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gang members, as if a activist judge has jurisdiction in international airspace. Crazy. Saying any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States, however that is accomplished. Make sure it's accomplished with immediately. Over the weekend, there were reportedly 2 flights en route to Central America, and 1 flight bound for El Salvador likely had already taken off. Okay. On Sunday morning, El Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele actually mocked Joe Boasberg, tweeted out, here was a New York Post headline: Federal judge orders deportation flights carrying alleged Venezuelan gangbangers to return to U.S., blocks Trump from invoking Alien Enemies Act. And then Bukele tweeted that article and said, oopsie, too late, with a smiley face. Everyone of any kind of power or consequence in this story, except, of course, for the Maduro regime in Venezuela, are laughing at this situation. And then Bukele, I sat there and watched in glee. He posted like a few videos, they were like 3 to 5 minutes, of the first 238 members of Tren de Aragua that are in El Salvador. Now, you're asking, why are Tren de Aragua prisoners in El Salvador if they should be going to Venezuela? Remember, President Trump does not trust sending them to Venezuela. That's why he had them in Gitmo and wanted them in Gitmo, because he knows that Venezuela is in the middle of an operation invading the United States with these Tren de Aragua criminals and criminally psychopathic operatives. He doesn't trust them there. They'll just come back. And remember, Bukele said, you can house them here. We will imprison them for you for a fee that will save America money, but be a that will be an absolute boon for their El Salvador's budget to take care and house and imprison these criminals. And that's exactly what we've done. Then Trump and his DOJ late last night provided an update to Boasberg order and said the criminal aliens were already outside of U.S. territory when the order came down, and that the judge had zero jurisdiction over international airspace. In other words, too bad. And then it came out to be explained. This is what Trump's DOJ explained. Quote, for the reasons explained on the record, federal defendants object to this court's assertion of jurisdiction, including over president's exercise of power vested in him by Article 2. Subject to that objection, federal defendants were promptly notified of the court's temporary restraining order issued in the morning and the 7 o'clock order that temporarily enjoined any removals pursuant to the presidential proclamation. So I said, okay, he doesn't have power, but we recognize that this injunction was issued. Then they go on to say, federal defendants have sought emergency appellate relief from the D.C. court as to both orders. The Court of Appeals has now ordered expedited briefing on both motions. The 5 individual plaintiffs that were subject of the first order have not been removed. So they go, okay, look, this all happened because of the ACLU and Democracy Forward and this suit with 5 people that were to be removed that were questioning this. Those 5 people have not been removed. Going forward, and in the absence of appellate relief, federal defendants will continue to protect the United States using authorities other than the proclamation. So President Trump and his DOJ saying, okay, that's in the courts. The 5 people that were the subject of this injunction, they are still in U.S. custody. But we have other authority outside of that proclamation, the Foreign Enemies Act, that we are acting on. Federal defendants further report, based on information from the Department of Homeland Security, that some gang members subject to removal under the proclamation had already been removed from the United States territory under the proclamation before the issuance of the court's second order. In other words, this stuff was already in motion when you did it, and those flights happened. And then President Trump thanked Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele for taking Venezuelan terrorists captured in America. He truthed out, these are the monsters sent into our country by crooked Joe Biden and the radical left Democrats. How dare they? Thank you to El Salvador and in particular President Bukele for your understanding of this horrible situation, which was allowed to happen in the United States because of the incompetent Democrat leadership. We will not forget. And America has not forgotten either. Nayib Bukele also tweeted out, the United States will pay a very low fee for them, but a high one for us. Over time, these actions, combined with the production already being generated by the more than 40,000 inmates engaged in various workshops and labor under the Zero Idleness program, will help make our prison system self-sustainable. Oh, the people don't sit there and do nothing. They have various workshops and they are in labor. So these MS-13 and these Aragua guys are being detained in a prison in El Salvador. We're paying a lot less for their imprisonment than we would here in the United States. They're not going to Venezuela where they can just be recommissioned to come back. And it's a win-win situation for El Salvador and for us and for these horrible, murderous MS-13 and Aragua prisoners. Wow, folks, I am almost out of breath. I've got more to report. I probably will have another live stream in 2 or 3 hours. So let's end here because this brings us full circle and all of this information. A lot of details. Just another Oglesby says they love the jacket. Thank you. I'm going to rock it. It is St. Paddy's Day, and I do have Irish blood running through these veins. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Big hug. Love and appreciate all of y'all. Make sure you hit the notification bell. I've got more reports. Hang tight.